Hi, my name is Nay Tabbara. I am the writer, director, and editor and producer of Ebb Flow, which is a short film that is in the Middlebury Film Festival this year.
Good.
All good?
So welcome.
Thank
So
you.
excited to talk to you about this film, and I'm trying. Since I watched it, I've been trying to formulate my thoughts. But I want to start with share with you an observation I had, and then how I course corrected how I was thinking about it. Watching the film, I had jotted down coming of age story right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Seeing her in the car with her mother, it's instantly, as someone who grew up with coming
Yeah.
of age stories, I recognize as coming of age. And then as I got more familiar with the place and where they were, without anyone, it was great that you didn't have like an omniscient narrator or a title slide that
Yeah.
said what was happening. You were able to infer it
Yeah.
as a viewer. But I then wrote coming of age meets geopolitical drama. And then about halfway through, I scratched out geopolitical drama and I said, no, this is coming of age there. So it was my American lens at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then as I became immersed in it, it's like, this is what it is like to come of age in that place.
Yeah.
And as we spoke about before the camera started rolling, any time over the past 5 decades, it could have been similar.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Definitely. It was, we were actually, my cinematographer and I were talking at some point, how are we going to make it clear that it's set in the time that it is, or
Right.
like in the location that it is. And we were contemplating like, okay, opening the film with Beirut 2006 title card. But I just did not want to, I just, wanted to start with the film. I wanted
Right.
the first frame that you see is just that boy and that fantasy that she has in her mind.
Correct.
And that was very much the style that I wanted to go for, because I also grew up watching the same films,
Right.
like all of those coming of age stories that
Right.
we, rom-coms in high school and all of that. And this was the style that I wanted to go for, because when I think about how I grew up in Lebanon, it was not far from, how my friends that I met here in New York grew
Right.
up. We were listening to the same music, we were wearing the same clothes, we were doing the exact same things.
And
So-
how mother and daughter are talking to each other
Exactly.
is universal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not, I think there's always that lens or that mindset of like when you're thinking about a story in the Middle East or in Beirut, there's immediately that like geopolitical lens. And I wanted to kind of get away from that a little bit.
Yeah.
I've had some people who watched the film and said, we actually watched it and we don't know where it's set. Like if they don't know the Arabic that we're speaking, or like the intonation, the Arabic dialect that we're
Right.
speaking, they wouldn't know where it is. And I'm not upset. I'm
No,
not
I
upset
think that's
about
okay.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was contextualized for me as the story developed. I realized where you were, based on the conversation. There's one point where the two young people are sitting there on the shore, and they're discussing who was responsible for the previous day's
Yeah.
bombing. And, it was supposed that maybe it was the Syrians or the Israelis. So right away I was like, okay, I know where this
Yeah.
is now. I had an idea, but now I
Yeah.
know where this is. What's striking about that, though, is that it seems like each of them are starting to take a side, and then she says, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there was, even at that age, there is almost a cynicism is a little, she's not worldly enough to be totally cynical, but there's a cynicism. Like, it doesn't matter who did
Yeah.
it. We're living through this either way.
Exactly. And that whole scene was, the entire script was like, let me go back to different moments of me and my friend's childhood growing
Yeah.
up there. And a lot of the times we were very politically active during that time for
Okay.
12, 14-year-olds. It's very young, going to protest and speaking politics and all of that, but we didn't really know what we were speaking. We were just very much copying what our parents were saying.
Mimicking
right.
it, yeah.
Exactly. So it was just a lot of, it's not like substantial arguments that have facts behind them. It's just eventually like they're saying what they have to say. And I'm sure they're both saying what their parents have said at home. But I also did not, especially with the situation right now, I did not want it to sound like there's any side that's being taken, because
Right.
eventually, as you said, like the reality is that we are living through what it is. It doesn't matter who it is.
Right.
It just matters what we're going through.
So one of the other things, the subtlety of how you're introducing basically everything that's hanging over them. You know, you have the mother, when she's getting out of the car, the mother says, paraphrasing, but you know, these are dangerous times right now. And then you hear the I don't know, the PA system in the school. But then she's standing at her locker, and the stickers on the locker is like, she's so innocent. I mean, and that just, it's the way that you were able to introduce both without either side feeling heavy-handed, I thought was just beautiful.
I'm very glad that you're saying that, and thank you. And I mean, it is eventually, even though she hears a lot of politics and, you know, she's living in that world, that's what we're worried about, and that's what she's worried about. It's not about, you know, it's become the status quo. It's become, that's just how, you know, everything is. It's just sometimes there's instability, but then we're going to school, and then we're meeting our friends, and we're having these crushes, and this will happen again, but then we're going to go back to that.
And what teen hasn't told their parents they're going to their friends' house, and they're not.
Exactly.
So I also want to talk about the moment with the two of them when they wander off the beach into the concrete. It felt like a concrete bunker in a way, and I you know, the explanation that it was from a potential hotel project, but for me it felt like these are the bunkers you build when war is coming. But even those moments, it's very sweet at first, but then it instantly becomes freighted. I mean, you're almost like, are we about to witness sexual assault? Which just felt very real to me, like real to the lived experience for anyone. And you know, holding my breath a bit as the bomb goes off. I do have a question about how you captured that. Like, how do you...
The bomb?
Yeah.
It was, so this moment was always a conversation of, are we actually going to make... are we going to show it? Are we going to make him a nice guy? And like, she has the kiss that she wants to have, and then we heard the bomb, so like it becomes more about the bomb, or are we going to keep it the way that it is? And it was definitely very challenging to shoot, but one of the reasons why I wanted to keep it the way that it is because he is a teenage boy, right? He's not necessarily trying to actively sexually assault her, but there's not a lot of education, especially during that time, right? Like now, the kids' generation today,
it was not.
It was not like, it was just like this boy that has fantasies, and this girl that told him, I'll go walk with you. And then the explosion happening during that time, it was more of like, we always have these stories in Lebanon where it was like, oh, I was about to do this, and then the explosion happened, and it somehow saved me from whatever was going to happen. But it's this horrible thing that happened as well. You know, like we always talk about how when COVID hit, and then there was the August 4th explosion, because there was COVID, a lot of us were not in the country.
There.
Exactly. So it's always these kind of controversial experiences, but shooting it in that moment was very challenging because we rehearsed the scene a lot. It was a oneer, right? So like I needed all the beats to be hit in order for the scene to land and all the frames to be correct. And I needed the sound to be very loud, that they would be, I don't know, they would jump, so they would actually react. Exactly. We had pans being thrown at some point. We had like things moving, and eventually we just had to keep coming up with creative ways of maybe like screaming their name or screaming something that they did not
them react.
Exactly. And it was very tricky to find that cutting point of, you know, when she kind of like hits him by mistake and then goes back, and we didn't have the budget to show an explosion, so there was no way we were going to show it. And,
So I guess spoiler alert for those who have not seen it and want to. I feel it's very. I want to talk about the ending and the poignancy of the parents arguing. You know, it's time to leave. We can't raise our family here in this environment, and she's overhearing that. But at the same time, she is lost in the mirror in her thoughts about her first kiss. That is what resonated on that day, and that's what she ends up going to sleep to, is not, oh my God, there was another explosion. But I kissed a boy today. And I thought that was just, again, such a universal truth, especially for a teenager, about, you know, what matters in that moment. How did you come up with that ending?
Well, I'm glad it's resonating like this. It was, I think it's just, going back to the reason why I wrote this film, or like where it came from. For me, it's just that despite all of these things happening and the world blowing up around us, we were still teenagers. We were still trying to find our way and trying to do the things that we wanted to do. And I wanted to write a coming of age story in Lebanon. Like even the style, we really tried to push that style, like the shot in the lockers and the way that she's looking at the boy and all of that. And I wanted to be true to that in the end, where like this is, there are these things that happen, but eventually what she's worried about is she going to see him tomorrow at school, right? Because it seems like they're going to open the schools. Is she, it's not about the boy, it's not about anything, it's just about her having that milestone.
And she gets to have it. It's not taken from her. And I think that's important to see that, the resilience, whether they realize they're being resilient or not, I'm sure they don't, of the teenagers in the moment is no matter what's happening, they're still going to have that moment.
Because even if the world is blowing up around, like it's, you can't, I mean, we live that firsthand, but I also see it so much in Lebanon and everywhere else. Like you can't explain to kids that the world is like everything is going to stop in your life, like they're going to find ways to create new toys or like to play around or, to run around and to have these experiences with their families. And even, in that situation in Lebanon, she just found a way to have her first kiss. She didn't know what the extent of lying to her mom was, but she still did it, and she got away with it.
Have the reactions varied depending on the audience, like international audience versus a U.S. domestic audience versus like a age of people watching it?
I'm very grateful that the reaction has been very positive so far. I think it's the important, I mean, what I've heard from the U.S. audiences that has really, I don't know, just made me very happy and felt like, okay, there's something in this film, like a message that has come across that is a little bit what you said, which is it's a coming of age story. I've had some people that said, like, I was watching a teenager in Lebanon grow up the exact same way that I did. And for me, like having lived in Lebanon and in New York, I was hoping to bridge that gap.
It's relatable.
And I think, I can't take away from the most important audience for me is the Lebanese audience. And we haven't screened in Lebanon yet, but I have screened it to a lot of Lebanese people. We had like internal private screenings, and the fact that they would watch it and be like, this is how we all grew up and would relate to it. And I'm like, this is, I
love that.
First and most importantly, I've made this film for them. And like, as long as, they feel that it's authentic and it's relatable, then I feel like I've, done my job.
You got it right. You got it right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing it with us, and thank you for sharing
the conversation.
your story. Of course.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good?